That takes us to item 12, an action agenda. Action is necessary or appropriate on matters discussed in executive session. Do I have any motions?
I'll move that we approve selected employment items per Exhibit A.
Do I have a second? Second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? That passes 6-0. Do I have any other motions from executive session? Seeing none. All right, that takes us to 13, Superintendent's Annual Performance Review and Formal Statement by the Board. Do I have a motion?
Yes. After reviewing Dr. Ross's evaluation and considering the board members' comments regarding Dr. Ross's performance, I move that we conclude as a board that Dr. Ross received an overall satisfactory evaluation for the 23-24 school year. I further move that as a result of Dr. Ross's overall satisfactory evaluation, that we extend his contract by 1 year through June 30th, 2028.
Do I have a second? Mr. Satterfield, any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? And that passes 6-0. Before I jump to the second, I do have a draft statement from the board as a result of that vote. At our board meeting this evening, the board met to evaluate Dr. Ross's performance during the past school year. And we met with Dr. Ross to discuss his evaluation. The board evaluated Dr. Ross's performance on the 4 goals outlined in the district's strategic plan. We wish to commend Dr. Ross on his overall satisfactory evaluation for the 2023-2024 school year. We appreciate Dr. Ross's leadership and the fact that he thinks outside the box. He's creative and innovative. Dr. Ross focuses on the whole child in his leadership. His enthusiasm and positive nature affect all those around him. We are pleased with the direction of this district under his leadership. As a result of Dr. Ross's overall satisfactory evaluation, the board voted to extend his contract 1 year through June 30th, 2028. We greatly appreciate Dr. Ross's exceptional leadership and commitment to the district and the leadership he will continue to provide the district. Thank you. Yeah, that takes us to 14.
14, yes, sir.
Approval of solicitation for A&E services shown in Exhibit E. Do I have a motion? Anybody got a motion? Kevin?
I move that we approve the solicitation for A&E services as demonstrated in Exhibit B.
Do I have a second? Anybody have a second? Mr. Satterfield seconds. Any discussion? Dr. Ross?
All right, yes, sir. Thank you so much. It's time, do we have the presentation up for? Oh, it's in the exhibit, okay. This exhibit, I just wanted to outline, I know there was concern. We asked for A&E services or architectural engineering services on 3 projects. One, the Chapin Elementary School and Lake Murray Elementary School wing additions, as well as the A&E services for Dutch Fork Elementary School going to the Rich Lakes Education Center. I'd like to start off with the latter, which is Dutch Fork Elementary School. This site will be heavily impacted on March of the upcoming year with the widening project. And I want to speak to both sides of this matter. If the referendum fails, regardless of if it passes or fails, this site will be impacted. We have to consider how we're going to operate that site, and I am concerned that that site, in terms of egress and moving buses onto that property, we need to have a detailed plan. So A&E services on that project will give us a head start on getting, regardless if there's a pass referendum or a fail referendum, we need to address that. It is also our goal to make an option that if the referendum passes, that we can move into our structure and on August of 2026. To do that, if we begin A&E services after a referendum, we have missed that date. We need 18 months of construction time. It is the hope to get that work out ahead of that. The question is it a waste of funds if the referendum fails? And it's not the administration's position that is true. It is still it will still be in our facilities plan to add wings onto those sites. Ordering those plans further in the future will be an increased cost to us. Right now, if you look at those sites, all of those sites are currently operating with portables. I don't know the exact number of those, but it was always presented to me and the administration that the goal was to get students out of the portables. These wing plans are ways of getting students out of those portables into those classes, into the buildings. So I believe that this allows us, whether the referendum fails, we have that plan at a cheaper price than what we would have to do in an extended part of the 5-year plan. I just want to make note that our building plan, we can still get to $240 million if it fails, but it would be in 2037. And so by the time we get, I think it's 2037, 2039. So in 2037, we could use our existing debt without a referendum and get $240 million. But what would that pay for in 2037? If it passes, we can get $240 million and $80 million installments starting in 2025, 26, and 27. So that brings the reality of these changes up currently. So it's the goal of being able to start in 2025 versus starting in 2037. But either way, these would be used within the district to move students into the building. So we're asking, given that condition that we're in, to not move forward construction, of course, but the architectural and engineering services for those 3 projects: Chapin Elementary, Lake Murray Elementary wings, and the Rich Lex site or Dutch Fork Elementary School grounds.
Will you tell us again, if we don't approve to start with the architecture firm tonight and wait until after the referendum, how delayed does that put us?
So, and I'll turn to Mr. Knotts if I'm in error, but we showed a kind of an outline of where we would like to move everyone at once. And moving everyone at once was August of 2026. It takes us about, I think in architectural designs, we said about 6 months of planning before we get to the 18 months of construction. We were trying to move forward with getting those months, getting that architectural work out now, because if you wait till after the November election, now count 6 months from there, and then you have additional 18 months of construction, we have missed that deadline. Mr. Knotts, you want to speak on that?
We do believe that there are some firms that could help us meet the 6-month timeframe. The further we push this out, the longer it's going to take to get the drawings. We're just delaying the whole process, 6 months or longer.
I just wanted to get as much clarity as possible. We had somebody speak tonight about it, and then we got a couple of emails prior to this meeting with people who have concerns about the cart before the horse situation. And so as we take the vote, I just want, I guess I just want to make sure it's clear why we would be doing, why we would be doing this, and that we aren't losing money, because I feel like the Derrick Pond situation keeps coming up too. And obviously that was way before our time, but people feel very strongly about it. And as we look to get people's support, especially going into a vote on the bond, we don't want to shake the community's faith. And so I just think the more information we can provide and clarity, the better.
And to that point, I want to be realistic on what we're saying in our materials. We're saying that if it passes, this happens. If it doesn't pass, this happens. Without moving forward on the architectural, we need to really go back. If we're going to wait till after the election, we need to go back on if it passes, because that reality doesn't exist. It's going to move us further. We won't have the buildings to move in as if we planned it. So the one thing we can't get back is time. We have right now to prepare. If the board chooses not to move, we will assume those costs at a later time at a higher cost to our district.
Ms. Barnhart had a question first. I'll get you next, Ms. Huddle.
Just to follow up on what Ms. Snipes just said about the Derek's Pond property, last meeting, Ms. Blackburn-Hines asked a question about the plans that the district may or may not have in regards to that, the architectural plans, and I believe we were told that you would look for them. Did we find them? Are they there, or what's the status on that?
So we found an actual site plan that's basically just a quick little overview of what the school would look like over the actual plot of land, but no real drawings or anything along those lines. There was some information that we went back and looked at, and I believe they had, there were 2 different projects with the A&E firm at that point in time. We may have went forward with one group, but not the elementary school.
So those plans, we do have them. They would not be sufficient for this particular job?
We do not have plans.
don't have them?
We have, well, what is considered a site plan, so basically it's just a aerial view of a school with some trees that shows the bus loop.
I
in a
gotcha,
sense.
okay. Just like Ms. Snipes said, I was not here and during that situation, so I wasn't sure, what Ms. Blackburn-Hines was talking about, but I did want to follow that up because it did seem to me that that would be financially prudent to look into those if they were what we were looking for instead of going again, with another firm. So thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Huddle.
I guess I'm confused about particularly about the renovation one, the second one, because it says renovation into the Rich Lakes Education Center, and I understand that the parking lot and bus loops probably have to be adjusted either way, whether the bond referendum passes or fails. But if we go forward with this, doesn't it mean they're going to design it? It's currently designed for an elementary school, so it has elementary school bathrooms and all that stuff. So doesn't this mean we would pay to have it redesigned inside as well?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so I don't understand the urgency on this one because we have to find some place for the children to be. Like, if the bond referendum passes, let's take that. If the bond referendum passes, the children will have to get the Dutch Fork Elementary School will have to be built first and move the kids. And so you're talking probably 2 years, I would think, or a long period before we could build this, or renovate it. So I guess I just don't understand the urgency of doing this and why not wait, because whatever this cost, we can wait and be safe. I guess I need the urgency to understand that.
And I understand. I think, and I'll have our timeline up. There were 4 projects we had presented as the administration that we felt were critical to the rezoning options that we're presenting. Those 4 projects were the wings at Lake Murray Elementary and Chapin Elementary, and the new Dutch Fork Elementary and the conversion of the current Dutch Fork Elementary into the Rich Lake Center. To one of those projects, we are delaying on until we get the land. We have had talks in executive session about potential sites, and one of the, I think the main part from the board was that we don't run into the Derek's Pond situation again. So we are holding off on moving forward for A&E on Dutch Fork Elementary until we can procure the whole site and get the clearances that we need from DOT and the DOE. That being said, tied to the movement of rezoning is clearing space in Spring Hill High School, clearing space in Piney Woods, clearing space at Irmo High School. The entire movement of our district depends on having places for those students to go. Those students are moving from secondary levels to an elementary building. It was our goal to have that renovation done as we move the students into Dutch Fork Elementary School. I think it's important to understand that we've adopted a 5-year plan. We're just asking to move in that plan. If the board decides to wait, that's okay, but it needs to be informed of the new cost. The existing plan does not work if we wait. So if we decide to wait, we need to come up with a new plan because all of those timelines don't work anymore. And so it's our goal. I don't see it as a waste of money if it's going to be used. It can be used in 2025, or it can be used in 2037, but it can be used. And so it is our goal to get it where if the voters say we want to move earlier and transition earlier, then we would be in position to do that.
Ms. Huddle, have a question?
I move to amend the motion to remove the item for renovations for Dutch Fork the renovations to Dutch Fork Elementary School until after the bond referendum vote.
I second.
Okay, and I want to explain it. I appreciate that we took the elementary school out of this for the reasons that you mentioned, Dr. Ross. But I still don't think it makes sense to spend this money now when we really have to have, if you're really going to put them in order, you have to have the elementary school plans first because you have to have a place to move the children. And I don't see the urgency on this, and I believe that if we spend this money and the bond referendum doesn't pass, it's not a given that we will do this. Things change. It's also, as I believe Mr. Knott said before, building codes change. So even if we use the plans, there may be new building codes by the time we get to use them. So I just think the prudent thing to do is to wait. So that's the reason for my motion.
Microphone.
I have a question about Ms. Huddle's motion, and that how does that affect how much money we're spending in the services?
We haven't put this out to bid yet, so we wouldn't know precisely what that would be.
What was the question again?
Well, Ms. Huddle suggested that we remove one piece from the motion. I was just trying to figure out from a cost perspective, what does it save us, money-wise, if we don't get, architectural services specifically for one out of the 3 things that are listed?
I would have to get some more information, but when you look at the Dutch Fork, the current Dutch Fork Elementary, one of the biggest parts of it is going to be reworking the flow of the school as they widen that road. That's going to be one of the big parts of it. It's not like we're going to go through and bring down wings and reestablish wings and kind of reinvent the entire school. We're going to go through, we're going to be looking at restrooms. If we have to take it from a child restroom to an adult restroom, what will that take to make that happen? Looking from the code perspective of, like the life safety code, what we had mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that, hey, if they have something that is non-functioning or is not in compliance now, we want to get it in compliance to make sure that it is up to code at this point. So it's, things along those lines. So without having specifics and getting pricing, it's kind of hard for me to tell at this point.
I have looked at what we've spent in the past on things, and it's not an insignificant amount of money. I mean, it's going to be several $100,000 at minimum, based on what we've spent before.
One second. Ms. Barnard had her hand up.
Just kind of following up on that as well. I just believe that, in my personal opinion, I strongly caution against us voting on things, especially because this bond referendum, we did vote as a board to put it on the ballot for November. And this, out of a lot of things that we as a board do, we as a district do, we vote on a lot of money and a lot of finances and a lot of things that the public, they can email us, they can call us, they can give us their opinions. But, I mean, at the end of the day, the 7 of us vote on these things. And this is something that now, it is in the voters' hands now. Regardless, I abstained from the vote because, that was my belief. It should go to the voters as to how we spend the tax dollars that they provide to us. And I just don't think it's a good idea, in my opinion, to do things, like you said, the cart before the horse situation. Regardless of how much time it would save or finances it would save, I just believe that, we have 17,300 some odd students in this district and their families, and the people who don't even have students in this district, they still, what we do with their tax dollars affects them. And so this is one opportunity that they have in this bond referendum vote in November to make their choice yes or no. And I don't think that we should do anything before our constituents make their decision on whether or not we should, because this is one of their, sole opportunities to do so.
So let me say this real quick, and I appreciate everybody's comments. I think with, in my perspective, looking at obviously Lake Mary Elementary and Chapin Elementary and the classroom rings, regardless of a referendum, I feel that those are necessary. And looking at it through the perspective of portables are in there now, and we're able to house students in portables, but the reality of it is 15, 20 years ago when those portables were put in some of these schools, that kids were smaller than they were today. And I won't go into the story again, but kids are bigger. They don't fit in the portables like they used to. I'll leave it, sorry. Next person.
Matt, can I say something?
Field.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and kids are bigger. And your son's a runner, right?
He is a runner.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, a runner's a kid, and if there's an intruder or a danger to the school, they're the fastest kid in the portable, so they get out. Yeah.
But, and let me just reiterate that. They get out because not all 22 kids can fit into the secure bathroom, right? And it's because children these days are bigger than they were 15 years ago, purely size in itself.
Yeah.
And so any effort that we can do to expedite the process to put our schools in positions to where we can put brick and mortar in place for safety and security, I'm on board for.
Yeah, and I am as well. My question is, I guess, and I'm trying to make sense of this, is why are we okay with Lake Murray and Chapin, but not Dutch Fork Elementary?
And it's not a question of okay, I'm just questioning the timing of it. The Lake Murray and Chapin, those, you don't have to move kids to be able to put kids there, right? You can go ahead and design it, and if the bond referendum passes, you can put it out for bid, and you can fast track that. So I understand doing those designs. So my motion was to remove the redesign of Dutch Fork Elementary because I don't understand the urgency of it when the kids are going to have to be moved before we can renovate the school. So I don't get the urgency, and the danger is we pay for it now and the bond referendum fails, and now we don't have a use for that payment. We've flushed it, and we've got a lot of maintenance needs in this district still. We're getting emails and hearing from people, and that's money that could be spent on that. And if the bond referendum passes, obviously, yes, we're going to go do it. I just think it's kind of like, and I think somebody sent us an email about this, but if you didn't know if you could get a mortgage, would you go ahead and hire an architect to design your house? No, you'd wait until you got the mortgage.
And I understand that, but you can make the same argument for Lake Murray and Chapin Elementary, because if the referendum doesn't pass, we still have a lot of kids that are in portables. You see what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, but there's also money available. If the referendum doesn't pass, there's 8% money that would be available to do those projects. So that does make it a little bit
Right.
different.
And I don't disagree with that, but we have a myriad of projects. So I don't know that that would be necessarily the first thing that would have it. We got sewage backing up in schools, and we got classrooms that need walls that don't have walls, and some of our schools are just in really rough shape. So I don't think those would be priorities. So I guess my concern is that, I mean, personally, I would like to move forward with the whole shooting match. I understand what the rationale, at least I think I understand the rationale that you have with regards to that. Dr. Ross, the cost for these services, what would be the benefit or what would be the detriment of waiting? I know that these students at Dutch Fork Elementary School are not going to, they are going to be moved to another school, correct?
That's correct. And we'll take, keeping with Manatella's presentation, would be balanced in our discussion. I'll start at if it passes. If it passes, then it would be moved to a new school. It was of the 4 projects, it was the project of the new Dutch Fork Elementary School in its existing zone. If it fails, those students stay at that current site. What we're worried about is, one thing we know is in March, they're going to start expanding that road. We're going on record saying we do not know how to operate Dutch Fork Elementary School when it loses its front yard. If we wait till November to issue this, we have to figure out how to get buses, how to get car rider lines. I'm very worried about how to operate that building with what we saw on that frontage of that school.
Well, let me say this too, and, you know, a lot of, just so you got, you folks, not you guys, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that, all you folks out there, no, board members go out and visit schools. That's part of our protocol. We're supposed to go out and visit schools and talk to staff and see how things are going and look at facilities. And Dutch Fork Elementary School is like a maze. It's like a corn maze to a great degree. It's been added on and shifted, and matter of fact, one of the assistant principals had a desk, a student desk, sitting in the hallway because his office was so far away, and so if teachers needed his assistance, he would be close by, which, you know, that's just a minor adjustment. But the point being is, whether the referendum passes or not, that school is going to need a great deal. If the referendum passes and we can move those children to a new school, well, then that's great. But if it doesn't pass, that school is not functional, not just the traffic issues. I can tell you as a retired principal, it's not really conducive to a really good educational environment without a lot of renovation and change, so.
One second, Kevin. I know Kimberly had one. I had a quick question. Dr. Ross, this might be more directed towards Ms. Rawls, but the funds that we'd be utilizing for this services, we approved a fund balance assignment of $3.5 million a little bit back. Would, if Ms. Huddle's amendment to the motion, if it was to postpone getting A&E services for the Rich Lakes Education Center, would those funds still be paid out of that $3.5 million assignment?
They could be, depending on the time frame, you may have to reassign it again or ratify the assignment so that it would continue.
Okay. I know Mr. Scully.
I guess my point is, I don't think that I don't support the motion to defer the plans on the Dutch Fork Elementary School. These are upgrades and items that we've already identified as needing to happen. And the point is, so regardless of what happens with the referendum or not, they've got to be done. We've already approved them in our 5-year plan. We've put them on the ballot. We need to get moving on them. And I think the point Dr. Ross is making tonight is time is money. And if we delay it, it's only going to cost us more in the future. And to me, that's the answer to your question, Ms. Snipes, is what's the cost of taking that out? Well, it's going to be a higher cost in the future if we do that. So I'm in support of moving forward on it.
Go ahead.
I just let Kevin go first since I had already spoken one time. Ms. Suttle, I think you and I were on the same page on this until you made that motion, but it's only because I'm struggling with the fact that in the revised motion, and I brought this up before. It's weird sitting like this 'cause I can't see. I brought this up before. You talk a lot about feedback you get from the community, so I know you can understand the statement I'm getting ready to make, which is that the feedback I get a lot of times about where we direct our resources, like which schools, which parts of the district. And although I understand your point, it doesn't feel good to say, let's take away money from this part of the district and spend it in Chapin. And I'm not, and that's not where I'm going with this. I'm just saying it based on, feedback that I get.
Can I address that? Actually, I totally agree with you. I'm actually against all of this, okay? I'm against all of it because, again, we have precious resources, and I don't think it's a good idea to spend them before and what Ms. Barnhart said, let the public speak, and we'll follow their direction. But I think it's not, I think spending this money now, if it was your private life and your money, you wouldn't do it. So I think it's all a bad idea. But I made the motion because if the concept is we have to do it because we will mess up the construction schedule, if that's the reason we're doing this, then it doesn't make sense to redesign Dutch Fork Elementary right now, because it's going to have to wait until we have a place for the children. So it doesn't make sense that we have to do it now. So, but I agree with you. I think, and I have to vote on what I think is a right use of money, not based on how it looks. I agree. It would look bad to say yes to the wings for the elementary schools in Chapin and no to Dutch Fork. But at the end of the day, we have to do what's right for the money, because the reality is if we need the money, the place it's going to get spent is probably Dutch Fork Elementary or some of our other elementary schools. So I want to save the money in case the bond referendum doesn't pass, so we'll have the money to spend where it's needed.
Any more discussion, Mr. Scully?
Yeah, just one point. The point about, let the public vote on where the money's spent, just a clarification, this money is not, that's paying for this is not referendum money. So it's not up to the public. This money is coming from our budgetary money, and that's our decision. And so I don't agree with that sentiment about letting the public vote on whether we spend these funds for this.
I have a question about that, though. Isn't this a draw on the bond referendum money? It's not? I thought it was positioned in the bond referendum language.
No, ma'am. Remember,
We
this is
talked
our-
about that at one time, though, that we would pay for A&E early and you could draw it. Is that not the case?
Let me, and Marty, you can correct me, but I'm just speaking on the philosophy, you on the details. If you look at the language of the referendum, we have in there language for A&E and acquisition of land. But those are for projects outside of those critical four. I wish I had that timeline up if we could, because in that we've presented since our workshops, we've said these are 4 items that if we're going to make the transition work, these are the 4 we would like to do in advance of those 4 projects. And so we would not be pulling those out of referendum money, but out of fund balance. So we did an assignment for $3.5 million for the 5-year plan. And that's where these funds would come from. It would not come from the draw. Now, there are other projects within the proposed referendum that if it passed, we would need land for, and we would need A&E services. And the board would have to decide, are we going to do, what's the method of delivery? So we have a lot of work, but we would have time to do those. Those would not be tied to the time details of moving everyone towards August of 2026. So I just want to make that distinction, that this is coming from a fund balance assignment. It's currently approved in our budget. It's sitting there. And so our execution on this would allow us to use that. So in the event that it passed, we would have a way to go. And if it doesn't pass, at minimum, and I'm going to reiterate this is not coming up in our discussion, but we have a very real issue beginning in March. I have to have an answer for those families in operating that. So having the expertise of an architectural firm to tell us how to get buses and parents in and out of that building. We have a church, we have a graveyard, we have some land that we don't own. There's a lot of contingencies that we need to work around. So this is in our fund balance assignment. But Ms. Rolls, you can speak to anything I missed.
No, so that is correct. We did the fund balance assignment. The costs that are represented in those projects would be construction costs that are in the bond.
Just a question. If, I'm trying to think of how to word this and how to do this under Robert's Rules of Order, but what I guess I hear you saying, Dr. Ross, is that the outside of the building, the entrance and the exit has to be redesigned no matter what, and it would not matter whether it's an elementary school or it's adult ed? Okay.
To that point, the lion's share of this, and I don't want to lie, so Alan, correct me. The lion's share of that in terms of internal was really bathroom and some office space. But the majority of the work we were looking at is the layout of the grounds. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I think a lot of the stuff that was internal was bathrooms, and then any of the code-related items that fell under the NPS report, or items that we know about that are deficient, that need to be replaced, that are end of life.
But the internal would be very different if it stayed at elementary school versus, okay, so, I don't know, can I withdraw my amendment?
I reckon so.
Okay.
Parliamentarian?
Okay. I'd like to withdraw my amendment, but I'd like to make a motion to divide the question between the two RFQs.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, there'd be an amendment to the motion to break it up into two, one for the elementary school wings and one for the Rich Lex building.
And I second that.
Okay.
And the reason I want to do that is I want to give us a chance to address the Dutch Fork Elementary one. If we separate the question, we can adjust that one to just be the outside and the inside. And that vote may lose, but we'll have the ability to do that. So that's why I want to separate the question.
Any discussion? Mr. Satterfield?
This is not specific to what Ms. Huddle was talking about, but I wanted to ask Dr. Ross another question with regards to moving fifth graders back to the elementary schools. Can you give us a little insight on that?
So, thank you, Jenny, for putting up the timeline. What we proposed in the rezoning timeline is to ensure we wanted one move at one time, which was in August of 2026. To do that, we have to move the fifth graders in Chapin back into the elementary schools. Those are the three schools that do not have fifth grade. It was our goal of, with the 18 months of construction and moving early with the architectural, that we would have those facilities ready all at the same time. The wings, the new Dutch Fork Elementary, Rich Lex, and we all move at one time. The reason being, the space that we need at Piney Woods, they have to leave, the fire program has to leave Piney Woods so that the fifth graders could go into Piney Woods. The shifting that we would do for the Academy for Success. Remember, we're trying to relieve Chapin High School's numbers. So as we move more students from Chapin into Spring Hill, we have to get the Academy for Success out of Spring Hill into this site. It is a domino effect that we are trying to get all four of these projects done at once. If we choose to wait, I need to readjust this timeline, is what we're saying. We've promised this timeline with those conditions. If we take those elements or ingredients out, it's a whole different recipe at this point. This timeline, I don't think can stand. So it was just our goal to say, families, this is how we're moving in 2026, 27. It was our intent to move everybody at once. We would have to readjust the timeline and do multiple staggers of this because the room is not there. And so as we work on the Dutch Fork, when we agree, we don't want to repeat of the Derrick's Pond situation, so we're trying to bring all of that to you as one package, an approved package with road frontage, access, and A&E. But that's the last of the 4 projects that we feel are critical to the movement of students, using our existing facilities to move the students from the overcrowding we have in the west to the east.
So you're saying you can't have half of a middle school, right?
I
Just
need
doesn't work, does it?
I need all the ingredients
All the
together.
ingredients down.
And if not, if there's the will of the board to not do that, I'm just informing that I need to readjust the timeline plan.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? No. Ms. Huddle, do you want to reiterate your amendment to the motion?
It's actually, it's called a subsidiary motion. I move to divide the question into approval of the A&E services for the the Lake Murray Elementary and Chapin Elementary, and a second question to approve the renovations to Dutch Fork Elementary.
Do we have any more discussion pertaining to, what did you call it?
Divide the question.
Divide the question. So I'll call the first question to vote. All those in favor of Dutch Fork Elementary School and.
No, actually, we have to approve to divide it first.
Excuse me.
If we
thank
don't
you.
approve, okay. She seconded it, so
Thank
we just
you.
need to vote.
All right, all those in favor of Ms. Huddle's dividing of the motion? All those opposed? That motion passes 4-2. Which then takes the question divided into 2 questions, correct? Do we need a motion individually?
Yeah, I move that we approve the RFQ for Lake Murray Elementary, new wings at Lake Murray Elementary and Chapin Elementary.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, any discussion?
Could you repeat that, Ms. Huddle, please?
I move that we approve issuing an RFQ for architectural and engineering services for the planned additions to Lake Murray Elementary and Chapin Elementary. Did I get that right?
Yeah. Thank you.
Any more questions?
I did have a question. Do we have numbers kind of to go with this, like how many students it's going to add, how many classrooms, just some round numbers?
Dr. Harris, you have, we look at the addition totals for Lake Murray and Chapin Elementary.
With the approval of the bond referendum, Lake Murray and Chapin, what we tentatively looked at, it would increase the number by, for both schools, to about 800 students each, based on the initial information that we currently have, about 800 each.
So what is the net increase at each school?
I'd have to run that.
Sorry.
And while he's calculating that, to be fair, that is assuming all of the portables in plus growth, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, so the net it's not going to be that large because we're bringing all those portables in and then we have additional growth.
I actually meant the net over the building, that's a very good point. I meant the net footprint excluding the portables. So if the school currently, the physical school carries 700, is it 100 increase? So that's a very good point.
Because in that, I think we create capacity with the portables. And I think that's was important to understand. Our capacity that we're using, we include portables in that. So, we can get that.
But it is
Yeah,
true
I
that
know
this
that.
would mean we would not need any portables at either school, should not, I realize things happen,
Things happen.
but we should not need any portables at either school, and there should be a little bit excess capacity.
That's correct. So for these wings, the design is to remove all of those portables and then have area for growth. I'm sorry, Dr. Harris.
This is very initial, so I hope my math is correct, but including, we're talking about, roughly about 100 students differential, somewhere thereabout is what I'm looking at. Maybe not to the number, but somewhere in the ballpark, about 100 differential for the students.
Do you know how many we're putting in portables right now? It can be a ballpark.
I think I have
14.
that.
I think we're about just shy of 300 students.
Okay.
Again, I'm giving you a really close ballpark number here.
Yeah,
without
and
calculating,
close
but
enough
about
for hand
300,
grenades is
yeah.
good for this one.
Yeah.
But, okay, so 300 in portables, additional capacity of 200 with brick and mortar. So essentially, we're putting 400 students in a secure environment.
That's correct, because right now, as of May 6th, we have 8 portables at Chapin Elementary School. So all 8 of those would be brick and mortar, then we would have growth. We have 16 portables at Lake Murray Elementary School. All of those would be in brick and mortar plus growth. Now, I want to be to fair, of the 8 portables at Chapin Elementary School, 7 are in use. Of the 16 portables at Lake Murray Elementary, 11 are in use. So I just want to just be very clear in terms of what we're assuming. A lot of that is already in growth with that. But to your point, Ms. Huddle, that's removing the portables from those sites.
So go ahead, Mr. Satterfield. and I'm about to
Yeah, I
call for
had
vote.
one more, well, sort of a comment and a question. I'm still trying to understand how we are approving Chapin Elementary and Lake Murray Elementary, but not Dutch Fork Elementary.
We haven't voted on that yet. We just
I
split
know
it.
that, but the proposal is such. And it's like,
Divided, it looks like that's what we're.
that's what it looks like. It's like it's like the other end of the district gets it, and one end of the district gets it, and the other doesn't. And the one that has the most immediate needs really is Dutch Fork Elementary, because they don't have any control over the widening of the road and what's going to transpire with their school. And the argument of putting the, horse before the cart, or why would you hire an architectural firm? Why not just wait until see if the referendum passes and that was your argument, was not to, why are we spending money for an architecture? Why would you buy a house if you don't even know if you're going to get a mortgage? If we're using that argument, why are we approving an RFQ for 2 schools and not the third one, but still the 2 that have to pass the bond referendum for the money to be there? Does that make sense?
Yeah, can I address that? Again, it goes back to timing. So we put that schedule up there and we said, we've got to do this because of timing. The timing doesn't affect the inside of Dutch Fork Elementary. There's no reason we have to push to get that designed when the students, the construction of that's going to be pushed out because the students have to have a place to go first.
Well, without
So-
the approval, doesn't that also, sorry.
So the answer to your question is first, timing. The second is, if you look at the configurations for the middle schools, the plan is to go to the middle schools no matter what happens with the bond referendum in IRMO. If we don't do something about Lake Murray Elementary and Chapin Elementary, even if the bond referendum fails, we can't move to a new middle school concept. So I would make the case that whatever monies we have through 8% money, we should make that happen, because all the children in our district deserve a middle school environment. So that,
But
yeah.
what, I guess my question is to Dr. Ross's point about getting in and out of the school and the widening, that's a part of the A&E services too. So if we don't approve it, how do we fix that? That is an immediate need.
Well, we
And I
have-
have kids at that school, so I know firsthand that this is not this is a real problem.
We haven't voted on that yet, but I was gonna make the motion that we do the outside, because that's not money wasted. It has to be done no matter what. But
I just
that
don't
was my
wanna-
thought.
I just don't wanna feel like they're gonna get shortchanged, which,
Yeah, I just want to make one more point with that. It's, there was a lot of comments made. I think some of our public participants said the last referendum, then some folks got more than the other folks, and then some promises were made when some folks, the schools that are the greatest need. Now, I know there's overcrowded in this and out in the Chapin area, but I keep saying these other schools, they have some real needs. And I hate to think that the Dutch Fork Elementary School would not get the same consideration. And that's how I see it. I see that they're not getting the same consideration that Lake Murray and Chapin, the schools at the other end of the district, are getting. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Any more conversation? I can
Yeah.
call the first
So,
portion. Oh,
yeah,
sorry,
real
Mr.
quick,
Scully, go ahead.
what was the motion that we just voted on? Can somebody read that to me?
The motion that we just voted on was to split this question up into two motions. So now we're about to have a vote
On two motions?
on two separate motions.
Okay.
The first motion would be approval of the A&E for Chapin Elementary and Lake Murray Elementary. And then the second motion would be for A&E for the Rich Lakes Education Center unless it's amended.
Okay, so that's why I wanted to know the timing of that second motion. Okay, the second vote.
Any more questions? I'll call the first question to vote. All those in favor? Is 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed? 2. That passes 4-2. Ms. Huddle, do you make a second motion? How does this work?
Well, I was going to make a motion to just do the outside, so I'll just go ahead and do that, and somebody can amend me if they want to. I move that the board approve a solicitation for architectural and engineering services to redesign the external portion of Dutch Fork Elementary School to accommodate traffic and parking with due to the road widening.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Sparta, we got a second. Any discussion on the amendment?
Well, I'd just like to make the case that, to Mr. Satterfield's point, if we do this and we can get going, the kids that are there will get the benefit of it being redesigned as soon as possible, but we'll save the redesign cost on the inside. If the bond referendum passes, we have plenty of time to design the inside. If the bond referendum doesn't, that money will be available to fix whatever needs fixing at Dutch Fork Elementary or whatever may need a more pressing matter.
Yeah, and let me, Matt, if you don't mind, I still say that, and I know you talked about the 8% money, we have a lot of pressing needs. There are no guarantees that this 8% money is going to one school or another. It would be up for a board vote, my understanding. I don't think that changing the front driveway comes anywhere close to addressing the needs of a school. That's just my thoughts and my feelings. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah, Ms.
To
Barnhart.
Ms. Huddle's motion, that is addressing the most pressing need for Dutch Fork Elementary would be is that what your motion is asking?
It's
Is
to
putting
the outside,
forward
to fix the outside.
the most pressing need that we are talking about that needs to be done for Dutch Fork Elementary to make life as easy as possible for them in this transition of the road widening and all of that, correct? Okay.
I guess real quick, to Dr. Ross, regardless of what happens in this election in November with whether the referendum passes or fails, would the A&E services for the Rich Lakes building be any different versus if it was to stay at Dutch Fork Elementary? Would the outside, the bus loop, parking, is it going to be viewed differently, whether that's an elementary school
Right.
with a pivot or?
Good point. So as we presented in our last board meeting, what happens if the referendum fails? And I share with you, we don't have sufficient plans. We know how to move students, but in terms of the quality of the buildings addressed in the NPS report, we're gonna have to really make some tough decisions on where to get these funds from. We made a recommendation to the board to prioritize Dutch Fork Elementary School. That's the oldest continually used building in the fleet since, I think, 1953. One of the things that, and I just want to ask for clarification in this motion, as we talked about the outside, we would like to give that architectural, if the intent is to address the outside, but knowing if it's a bus drop-off loop that does affect the inside, that is considered a part of the intent of the motion, not the Rich Lex part of it, but if there are some offices or parent pickup doors or the egress that you receive students in has to be a very different width than what you would do if it's just a fire exit door. We just want to make sure that we have that intentionality, that it's not just the roads, but it's how we get the students in, how the fire marshal expects us, what's the distance that we need to have from the road, and that may involve some internal workings in that. So we say outside, I just want the intent to be, or make sure the clarification that the intent to be that there could be some inner workings related to moving students on and off. And we have some pictures we'll show later on of how we move those buses at Dutch Fork Elementary. That can't happen. We have some pictures of how we circulate parents, and I think Ms. Snipes has been through that line. We had our safety team go evaluate it, and that's the help we need to give us some experts. So I didn't want to take liberty with your motion, but I think it's more than you used to enter these three big doors, now you enter that door. We may have to do some reconfiguration of the site itself for that.
I think
Ms.
that's a
Huddle.
fair, and Dr. Ross, thank you for offering that. I want to amend my motion to say, to replace my motion, I'd say, to approve RFQ for architectural and engineering services for Dutch Fork Elementary's exterior as well as ingress and egress needs that are needed due to the planned widening of Broad River Road.
Have a second? Ms. Barnhart? Mr. Scully?
To me, it's two sets of plans cost more than one set of plans. So breaking it up into sets it doesn't make sense financially, which seemed to be everybody's original concern. I think we voted to split the original motion up into two pieces, and now we're changing the second piece. We need to vote on that original motion as it was intended for Dutch Fork Elementary School, in my opinion. So it just doesn't make sense to do this. So I'm not in favor of the motion, but I want to make sure that we have a chance to vote for the original Dutch Fork Elementary motion. So how can we do that?
So if this vote would,
If it
if it failed,
you can entertain another.
they would entertain another motion while we stayed on number 14.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, I'd like to call Ms. Huddle's amended motion. Just make sure I got it right.
Replace, let's just
Replace.
replace it.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Abstain? Okay. So it passes 3-2. Ms. Huddle's amended motion. That puts us, well, I guess we would go to 15, correct? All right, moves us to 15. First reading approval of August, September bond issuance and bond resolution shown in Exhibit F. Dr. Ross, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to ask, as Ms. Rolls comes to the lectern, we have our financial advisor, Jay Glover, here, as well as our bond attorney, Ms. Franny Hauser, to assist us. As we have been discussing, MPS presented to us in August of 2023 our facilities conditions report. You can see within our 5-year plan, we prioritize those facilities that are ranked score 2 for the referendum. Not in the 5-year plan are the needs of the schools rated, or the facilities rated 3 or 4. They're not in the 5-year plan. When we look at the total amount per MPS, we have $39.2 million of needs at these schools that are not within the 5-year plan. The question is, what do we do about these? And so we have a proposal with an opportunity ahead of us for a fall issuance of $15 million to address that. Now, it won't address all $39 million of need. So I would like to turn it over to Ms. Rolls, if you can share what our plan is for those buildings that are not included in the 5-year plan.
Yeah, it works. There we go.
Excellent. Is this better? All right. So as we're looking at what we can do with these schools that were rated 3 or 4 with their most important needs, health, safety, and security, we do have some projects that we are able to accomplish in these facilities. And we're looking at the schools there again that are not going to be addressed by the referendum should it pass. I want to go into a little bit of how we have the available resources. We will be able to issue, and within our 8% debt capacity, $15 million in bond without a tax increase, because we have sufficient resources available in our debt service sinking fund held by Lexington County to be able to make the bond payments next March. And like Dr. Ross said, we have Jay Glover and Franny Heiser on the line, so if there are any questions for them, they certainly can help answer any questions you may have. So what we're looking at is $15 million in 8% short-term debt. The bonds, like I said, will be paid off in March of 2025. The interest cost will be lower because the bonds won't be outstanding as long. The sale date of these bonds will be August with the closing in September. Cost of issuance approximately $50,000, which would be comparable to what we paid for the spring issuance. The benefits of having the fall issuance, like I said, it helps us address the schools that aren't being addressed by other funding sources. These are still needs. These are the highest level of needs, the health, safety, and security that we're able to address with these funds. And I wanted to share the project list. You can see that we're looking at some ADA modifications, approximately just under $11 million at Irmo Elementary, H.E. Corley, Ballantyne, Leapart, Chapin High School, and River Springs. We're looking at some air quality issues with HVAC, similar schools to include Spring Hill High School as well. Some building code compliance challenges that we're needing to get corrected. Some lighting, which we'll be able to switch out some lighting to LED, which in turn will save us some on electricity. Fencing to secure some of our elementary schools, River Springs and Leapart, and address some fire alarm system, analyze that alarms for why we are having, I guess, design changes for why we're having false alarms. So those are the $15 million worth of projects. You will see the descriptions here of what each line represents, which is pretty much what I just went over. For the ADA modifications, these are super necessary projects that are happening. We need to make sure that we have the proper signage, proper access to our facilities, and make sure we are compliant with all the regulations regarding ADA. So it would be our recommendation, it's from the administration, that we do move forward with the 8% capacity, $15 million bonds for using the Fall SCAGO program. You do have a resolution in your package, so we would ask that you approve the resolution and approve the bond issuance with not requiring a millage increase.
Do you have any questions, Mr. Rawls, before we get a motion? Ms. Huddle?
If you can go back to the list of items. So a lot of times we do stuff in the summers because the students aren't there. So what is the plan as far as when we would do these things, particularly the ADA modifications?
Defer to Mr. Knotts.
So the ADA modifications that we could do prior to summer work, there are some items that can be done right away. We would address them immediately, and if it required any firm to go through and redesign, then we had to go through that process, go through OSF, and then go out. So, we had to have those bid out. We had to go through the whole procurement process.
I guess to be more specific, I looked at the facilities report, and a lot of them were ramps, a lot of bathroom stall work. Is the work itself, can that be done while students are there, or would the work itself probably be done during the summer?
I think it could be a mix.
Okay. I have some other questions too, but
Anybody else? Ms. Barnhart?
On the HVAC, are we gonna be using the company that we currently employ, or are we gonna be issuing another RFQ for a different company?
So when it comes to bidding projects, we have a mix of items that are methods that we go through. We have it's a contract, I think, with Newberry County Schools that we are allowed to go out and source equipment. And then we can also go through and bid out projects. So, we have multiple ways of getting equipment.
Ms. Huddle?
if you go back one more slide or two slides with the list of schools. Yeah, so I was kind of wondering, so there were schools that had items, especially ADA items, but maybe the overall facility wasn't rated a 3 or 4. But I'll take Dutch Fork Middle, for example, had a lot of ADA items. So I was kind of curious, why did we choose to kind of prioritize based on the school rather than on the item?
So our focus, if you can go back to the first slide here, were schools that were in the 5-year plan. Dutch Fork Elementary School is in the 5-year plan. This is an opportunity that we won't have, and Marty, you can speak to that, or maybe Jay Glover can speak to us.
It was actually Dutch Fork
Dutch Fork
Middle.
Middle.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dutch Fork Middle is in the 5-year plan. What we were looking at is with this opportunity that we have, I think just for this fall, we have buildings that are not in the 5-year plan, and we had no plan for it. So that's why it was the recommendation of the administration to use this one-time funding source to address those facilities. And again, when I say address, the total universe of that is $39 million as of August. Once we start to uncover what this is, we want to have full disclosure. Those numbers have changed already. So that was as of August. 18 million is as of August. By the time we begin those projects, we will find that those costs have increased. So it was our time to use this one-time opportunity to address facilities that we just did not have in the 5-year plan.
And this is a first reading, correct?
First reading, yes, sir.
Okay. Do I have a motion to entertain? Kimberly? Snipes?
Sure. I'd like to make a motion that within our current 8% capacity, issue the 15 million bonds using the Fall SCAGO program to address identified capital needs at the 3 and 4 rated facilities prioritized in our 2023 MPS report. This will not require a millage increase.
Do I have a second? Mr. Scully seconds it. I mean, we've had discussion. Any more questions, Ms. Rawls?
Yeah,
Ms. Sutton?
I just, two. One is the bond wording says that, it talks about the availability of 8% money, and it says we have 19,491,000. So I just want to make sure I understand. So that's how much we have. If we issue this 15 million, then we would only have 4.4 million left right now, correct? Okay. Okay, so one of my concerns is, I have two concerns. Sure.
That would be what we would have between now and March of 2025. Once the debt service payments are made March of 2025, then that would open up capacity again.
All right. So that's better than I thought it was, because I was concerned that if we do that, I'm very, it's kind of a theme here, we're kind of front-loading stuff, and we don't know what the vote's going to be on the bond referendum. And we have, in the bond referendum, we have $5,150,000 in security upgrades. And I would think that if it doesn't pass, we would want to find a way to do that. And I don't want to spend the money and then not have it. But what I'm hearing you say is we would have that money.
Based on the current assessed value, we would have approximately 40 million after the debt service payments are made in March of 2025. But remember, next year is reassessment year. So if the assessed value increases next year, there may be a potential for more than 40 million of capacity and 8%.
And then I have another issue, which I'm actually going to make a motion to defer the vote on this until we get legal advice from the board's general counsel.
A second.
The reason I want to defer the vote is we have a Attorney General's opinion that we received prior, and it was actually in today's minutes, and it covers a couple of different topics, but one of them it covers is using funds that you've already collected for future bond. And it's a real short paragraph, I'm just going to read it. It says, it's understood that the bonds for which the tax was collected have not fully matured and that a liability for payment continues to exist. Under such, the surplus funds cannot be diverted to payment of the principal and interest of a new bond issue. And to me, that says we can't do this. But I understand that other people might have different views on it. So I think we should wait and I realize there's going to be a second reading, but I still think we should wait to vote on this until we get advice from our general counsel.
Can I ask one question? Can you reread that clip one more time?
It is understood, and by the way, this is on page 4 of the AG opinion that was issued to Lexington County Auditor Chris Harmon on September 21st, 2022. It is understood that the bonds for which the tax was collected have not fully matured and that a liability for payment continues to exist. Under such, the surplus funds cannot be diverted to payment of the principal and interest of a new bond issue. And I think that's exactly what we're doing. We're taking the surplus that exists in the fund, and that's why there's no tax increase for this, because we're going to take that surplus.
Do we have a liability for bonds that have not matured? And
If you go to the bond scale, there's still a bunch of bonds out there.
Can I, we have our bond attorney here online, and I think this was the same opinion you had her review. Ms. Hauser, if you're available to speak on this?
Can I make a point, though, here before we do that? I really think it's inappropriate, because if this goes through, her firm makes money on this. So I have to object that I think it's inappropriate to get advice on this matter from an attorney that would profit from the vote.
And I just want, we're getting, I just want the board to know that you have an attorney that represents you in bond matters. And I think it's good to hear her opine on this situation, so.
Before Ms. Heiser speaks, I would second Ms. Huddle. I would like to hear from our general counsel.
Mr. Scully has a question.
So, I'm familiar with the AG's opinion. In fact, we went over it at length with Mr. Harmon last summer, and representatives of the treasurer's office were also part of that meeting. And I don't think that there's, from my point of view, there's no problem using the excess or monies in your sinking fund to pay for the debt service on these bonds.
Thank you, Ms. Hauser.
So if I'm correct, we've got a motion on the table and we've got an amendment to the motion. And the amendment to the motion is to defer this vote.
Can I ask one more question before we go there?
Yeah, Coach Mike on.
Ms. Hauser, can you tell me, what is the practice of other school districts regarding this matter?
In general, the debt service accounts held by county treasurers are fungible, meaning that one bond payment's made, and if money's left over, then it's used for new debt, or it continues to be used as principal and interest come due on your bond. So I mean, this is a standard practice, and I certainly don't mind anybody wanting to talk to another attorney. That's certainly fine, but the practice throughout the state would be to follow the recommendation of your administration and to use the funds that are in the in the sinking fund, so that you have this one-time opportunity to access the to access funds that that will not require a tax increase.
Mr. Hogan.
Mr. Scully.
Yeah, I sure, I get the feeling sitting here that we're trying to defer governing as much as possible tonight. So this is a first reading. We have time between now and the second reading to get any other opinions that we need. I think Ms. Heiser is completely appropriate to give an opinion on this, and she's also the expert. So no opinion is going to be more suited to us than hers anyway. But that being said, if we want our general counsel to weigh in, that's fine. They can do that before the second reading. So I would not support this motion, the amendment.
Ms. Hauser, would there be any financial impacts with our ability to utilize SCAGO or any other aspects of this bond if it was delayed?
It depends on your meeting schedule. The part of the slide, I think, showed that the sale will happen towards the end of August. And so at some point between now and the end of August, if you want to participate in the SCAGO program, you would need to make a decision.
Okay. I mean, I think we can absolutely have our general counsel at the next meeting to make sure he's advising us on everything in front of us. We've got a motion, an amendment to the motion. Any more discussions on the amendment before I call it to vote?
I just have a comment. I mean, I don't think that I think it's prudent for us to, you said deferring governing, but to make sure that we're governing within the law is probably more important, but that's just the only comment I have.
Had this been a one and only reading, I might be more inclined to delay, but it is 2 readings with financial transaction, and so there will have time for a second vote pending how this one goes. I'll call Ms. Huddle's amendment to the motion to vote. All those in favor? 2. All those opposed? 4. I'll go back to the original motion. Ms. Snipes, do you mind reading it again?
I make a motion that with our current 8% capacity, issue of $15 million of bonds using a fall scale program to address the identified capital needs at the 3 and 4 rated facilities prioritized in the 2023 MPS report.
And that motion was seconded. Any discussion prior to calling it to vote? All right, all those in favor? 2, 4, all opposed? 2. That motion passes 4-2 for the first reading. I will make it a point, we will request our general counsel to be in attendance at our next scheduled board meeting prior to the second and final reading. That takes us to 16 on the action agenda, approval of the default rezoning plan for 2026-2027. I'll turn it to Dr. Ross.
Mr. Chair, with your permission, can we handle 16 and 17 together? Item 16 and 17.
As long as the board's okay with it, we can knock them both out as well.
Thank you, sir. As we're looking at the 5-year rezoning plan, just as a primer, the discussion was how do we feel our existing facilities to accommodate growth? Tracking the movement of our students, our in-person enrollment based on the number of schools throughout the year. Throughout the years, we've seen at one point the majority of our students were in the yellow area, the IRMO schools. As time went on, the majority of our students were in the green area, our Dutch Fork schools, and now the majority of our students are in the blue area, the Chapin schools. We have made the decision, instead of building new schools out in the Chapin area, to fix and fill using our existing facilities within the district. How we fill our schools is very important. There are 3 philosophies on filling schools. One is the theoretical field. Every space is maxed with 25 students each. What we have targeted is the maximum field, where we leave opportunities for spaces to be used for resource classes or art classes or science labs. But then there is the most competitive, which I believe is the target field, where we lower those class sizes and provide programs. When you look at max field, it's not using 100% of every room with maximum amount of students. It's using 80% of that at maxing the students so that you can have program space. You can have art classrooms and science labs and resource facilities. So when we do that and use our 45th day numbers, you can see this is the capacity of our schools. What we are discussed in our 5-year plan is moving from a structure that we see at the top to flatten out our schools, to move to a model of 5 middle schools instead of intermediate schools. We provided 2 scenarios. Scenario 1 is if the referendum does not pass, this would be the structure of schools and the flow of students at those schools. This next slide represents if the referendum does pass, how our students would flow through those models. However, each one of these is contingent on a map. We would need to move programs, move teachers, and students, and the goal is to move them all at one time. It is our goal to notify all of our staff by May of basically this upcoming year, before they sign their contracts, of their intended location in 2026-27. To do that, we are already on the 24-25 line. And so by adopting the options of the default map and the expanded map, the default map is if the referendum does not pass, this is how we move. If the referendum does pass, we would move to the expanded map. We want to give our staff, our students, our families as much lead time as possible so that we can make these plans and these adjustments. There's certain areas that won't change regardless, but there are a lot of areas that will. It is our concern that we give as much lead time to those families, that staff, those programs, those principals of the shift. Right now, we're operating within 3 attendance maps. It is our goal to move to these 2 and to notify our public of what would happen if the referendum passes and what would happen if the referendum did not pass. So as a result, it's the recommendation of the administration to approve the boundaries. As superintendent, I recommend boundaries to the Board of Trustees. And we would recommend these 2. The default attendance map would be used if there was no bond referendum in 2024. The expanded map, this would be used if there was a past referendum allowing for a expanded Chapin Elementary, Lake Murray Elementary, a new Dutch Fork Elementary, and a remodeled Rich Lakes Education Center. Remember, this map is important because it's tied to those 4 projects that we're trying to move forward on so that we could move to the expanded map alignment. So this is the recommendation of the board, of the administration to the board, and I stand for questions.
All right, before I open up for questions, can I get a motion? Mr. Scully?
Yeah, I move that we approve the default rezoning plan for 2026 and 2027 and the expanded rezoning plan for 2026 and 2027.
All right, do I have a second? Mr. Satterfield seconds. Open it up for discussion. Any communication, Ms. Huddle?
The QR code is already public, right? It's already on the public website. How will the board voting on this change what's already out there and what's already being communicated?
Right now, the question is, are we going to do this? And so we have not planned moving through because it has not been a commitment. I can recommend, but that doesn't say this is what we're doing. So this becomes what we are doing with the board's approval.
So I guess that's my concern is it going to be communicated that this is what the board approved?
Correct.
Okay, all right. My concern is that a lot of things are going to change and could change between now and 2026. The people, well, Ms. Hines isn't here, but the 7 of us aren't going to be the same people in November. I mean, we know that because she has said she won't be here. So I'm concerned that we tell the public this, that the board voted on it, making them think that it's in stone when it's not. And that I know I would be upset if I thought this is in stone and then I found out it wasn't, whether I was a parent or a property owner or a teacher. So I just don't understand why we want to put the board's stamp on it when we know that's temporary.
And let me say something to that real quick. And I understand exactly where you're coming from, Ms. Huddle. I'd say from my perspective, you know, going back 4 years ago, when the last time there was a discussion on rezoning, there was ample discussions about a total shift and a whole rezoning of the entire district. But ultimately what happened was the piece was cut for Piney Woods and to determine that zone. And from my perspective with you know, a big decision that voters will make, there is a good bit of our community that falls in that line of, prior to them saying yes or no on a ballot, I do think it's important for them to understand what their decision yes would put them at versus what their decision of no would put them at. With it being set in stone, I do disagree on that. I do think that with a board vote, it would be set in stone unless another board changed it.
Right, but another board could change it.
Well-
The board is going to be different in November. And it's just like what you said with Piney Woods. If that had been a bond referendum, then some people might have ended up being very upset, because if we had told them, you know, if you lived on Old Lexington and their original plan, you were going to be on Piney Woods. If we had told those people that and they had to vote, and then we said, oh, no, we changed our mind, I don't like the leading the public to believe it's set in stone when it's not.
Yeah, but without making a determination and a change, would that not leave more to the imagination to the public than actually setting a zone?
I mean, we're already doing it. I guess I'm just concerned that the public doesn't understand. For one thing, I had people call me when we voted on the bond referendum that didn't understand they were going to get to vote on it. You know, they don't understand that things can change. I mean, I will say, I mean, if you look right now even at the way that it shows up on the website, there's a disclaimer under it. So if we're going to publish it, I would really like to see a disclaimer there so people understand it can change.
Mr. Satterfield.
Yeah, a couple of things to point out. Number one is, this is a very long and arduous process. You don't just say, all right, now all these buses are going to go to this school now, and these buses that went to that school, now you're going there. This is a thing where you have to move programs, you have to move a lot of teachers, you got to move staff. It is a very long, drawn-out process that will take a great deal of time. So I do not envy the folks that are on this team that are going to go through this process. But this is not as simple as, well, let's don't do that, or let's send these kids here. You just don't. It just doesn't work that way. I mean, you just look at the certification of all these teachers and how you got to move these teachers who are no longer certified to teach elementary school or middle school, and it's a very long, drawn-out process. The second thing is, you know, we can always flounder. Floundering's easy. You know, you don't have to commit to anything. Then nobody can say, well, you said that. Well, at some point in time, you got to commit to something. Our superintendent, our administration, they're making this recommendation. They are the professionals here. We have all agreed, we've had this conversation several times, we want to go to a true feeder system. They need to know how we're going to get there. They're trying to get to that point to where they want a commitment from us. And you're right, another board, I think they would be idiots, another school board to come in and say, well, we're going to change our mind. Well, how dumb would that be? I wouldn't want to be that person. The perception would be, well, you already told the public, you told me that my kids are going to H.E. Corley Elementary School, and now you're saying no? I mean, that's, at some point in time, you gotta, you know, you gotta do it. You gotta step out and just do it. And I think that under the recommendation that we've had, the discussions that we've had, all the positive aspects of going to a true feeder system, which will help so many of our kids. And I know that a lot of you all don't understand not having the experience in school, but I can tell you, having the vertical and the horizontal planning and having those conversations and knowing the kids better, getting to know the children better. You got to look at Crossroads Middle School, Intermediate School, I'm sorry, Crossroads Intermediate School. How many elementary schools do we have fitting that, Dr. Ross? 10 elementary schools. And they go there for 1 year. And then they get a poor report card because they don't have any way of getting anything else. It's not a reflection of the teachers or the kids. It's the way the system's set up. So if you want to do something, of all the things that I have witnessed or seen or have been presented since I've been on the school board, I mean, I like the referendum and I like addressing the issues with the schools. But this may be the most important thing that I tell you, that it's going to help kids find success. So I trust our administration, I trust our team, I trust that they are going to do their very best to get us to that true feeder, the whole child, and this is what every other school district in the state, in the nation strives towards. No, there's no, I would like to find, I would challenge you to find another school system who said, well, it's good to put all 10 elementary schools in one intermediate school. This is a good idea. And then send them off to different high schools so there's no true feeder system. Anyway, I'm off my soapbox. Thank you.
Kevin, 1 second. I saw Ms. Huddle. I'll come back to you.
I don't even know where to begin. We're talking about, sometimes operational changes occur, okay? And you guys weren't here when we trusted all the professionals, everybody said, here's how it should work, and here's how it should feed this new elementary school that we built. And we came to realize that the traffic was going to be a disaster coming down a road. And so the recommendation was made, let's not pull that road into the new elementary school because it was going to cause a disaster. And this plan, I hear there's a new neighborhood going up near Dutch Fork High School. There's new neighborhoods popping up everywhere. Between now, and then you also have to look at, the classroom configuration, and sometimes you end up with a few too many kids and you need to peel one small area. I'm just saying, I don't think we need to lead the public to believe that this is set in stone and that it can't be changed, because they're going to be upset. If you thought this, and I've been here because, and Mr. Hogan was here too, we had parents come in and very irate with us because they thought one thing and another thing happened. So I'm actually going to make an amendment. I move to amend the motion to state that any communication regarding proposed zoning will include the statement, all zoning is subject to change at any time by the Board of Trustees, regardless of the outcome of the bond referendum. To make sure, well,
1 second.
and that's to make sure that it's crystal clear to people that this could change.
All right, then let me ask you this, along that same rationale, Ms. Huddle. There were some concerns expressed with the last referendum that all the monies didn't go where they were. So should we put a disclaimer on the referendum to say something might happen, a roof might cave in, something may happen in another school, so we can't guarantee that we're going to get all these projects, that we're going to address the projects on the referendum. I think it's pretty simple. It's just a commitment that we're going to move forward in this direction. Now, could there be a change? Yeah. But at least we're showing outwardly that we are committed to improving our schools and improving the situation for kids and supporting our administration. That's my point.
Mr. Scully.
Yeah, in regards to that amendment, no, if we're going to do that, then we might as well put a disclaimer on every vote that we ever take and pass, because anything we do is subject to change down the road. We could go back theoretically and change any vote that's ever been passed, change our policies. I mean, it can always change. But the point is, we can't, you don't focus on what future boards might do. That's up to them, and it's not our job to try to predict or do that. We'd never be able to pass a 5-year plan if we were worried about what future boards might do. We wouldn't be able to pass a budget during an election year if we were worried about what future boards might do. It just doesn't make sense. The board passes a motion, and it's the board's motion, so it is set in stone. If future boards want to change it, that's up to them. It's not our concern. We just need to do what we can do today based on the information that we have, based on the recommendations of the district. A ton of time, effort, and money has been spent on analyzing the rezoning plan, and this is the recommendation. And so, and the point of this motion is to clarify it for the public that this is the plan. And the default map is happening regardless. That's what's happening. Now, if something in the future happens and we run into a pot of money such as what is on tap with the referendum in the form of bond issuance, or maybe we get an angel investor that plops $240 million down to us, then we don't need the referendum. But unless something like that happens to where we have the money to make the updates that we need and the construction and the capital improvements, then the default plan's where we're at. And so the sooner that the public understands that and the district can prepare for it, the administration and the schools can prepare for it and plan and assign the teachers accordingly, then we're better off. But we need to make a plan and move forward.
Okay, so we've got a motion on the table and an amendment to the motion with the disclaimer to be added. Any more discussion on the amendment to the motion? Okay, I'll call that the vote. All those in favor of Ms. Huddle's amendment to the original motion? 2. All those opposed? 4 opposed. That amendment to the motion fails, 2-4. We'll go back to the original motion that Ms. Snipes read. Do you mind reading it again? Oh, I'm sorry. Kevin did. I apologize.
I moved that we approve the default rezoning plan for 2026, 2027, and the expanded rezoning plan for 2026 and 2027.
Okay. I think we've discussed this one. Any more comments before we call to vote? Seeing none, I'll call. All those in favor? That is 4. All opposed, 2. The motions 16 and 17 were combined, passes 4-2.